In today's video, we have a variety of news updates, including the Maple Leafs losing a player on waivers, Mitch Marner is ready to return from a long-term injury, NHL player safeties handed out some fines based on play that happened last night, plus we have some more information on all the situations with NHL coaching and some of the new allegations against some NHL coaches. We'll get into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news updates here, so let's dive right in and get started. First of all, the Toronto Maple Leafs yesterday placed forward Nick Shore on waivers for the purpose of being assignment to their American Hockey League affiliate, the Toronto Marlies, because Mitch Marner was set to return. They're trying to make enough space to make that happen, and unfortunately he was claimed by the Winnipeg Jets. So Nick Shore is now a member of the Winnipeg Jets organization, so of course because of that he's not going down to the Marlies. The Maple Leafs have already assigned Nick Patan and defenseman Martin Marincin down to the Marlies as well. Now, even with those calculations, it looks as though that technically with Marner's contract, they would be over the cap and over the amount of relief they're getting on long-term injury reserve from Nathan Horton's contract and David Clarkson's contract. So the other player right now who's injured is Trevor Moore. That leads me to believe, even though I haven't seen an announcement, they must have placed his contract on long-term injury reserve as well. The only condition really with that is they have to be out of action for at least 24 days. So obviously, depending on the exact date he went on IR, will determine when he's able to return. But that must be the case for the Maple Leafs for today in order to activate Marner and get him in the lineup for tonight's tilt against the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, getting Mitch Marner back will hopefully be a good boost. He's back slightly ahead of schedule after being out for the last number of weeks with a high ankle sprain. Obviously, the Marner injury looked pretty severe at the time, but he's done well with his rehab and recovery. He's appeared at some practices recently, looked pretty decent. So I guess we'll see how everything goes for his return. Of course, the Maple Leafs are coming off a fairly bad loss against the Flyers with a 6-1 loss last night, where you could tell by the end of the game that they were kind of quit, and even listening to comments from Austin Matthews afterwards kind of indicates that the last few goals against especially the Leafs were not kind of trying very hard, and they were basically had given up at that point. So not a good showing for the Maple Leafs. We'll see if they can do better against their former teammate Nazem Kadri in the Colorado Avalanche. Now, as I mentioned as well, NHL player safety has handed out a few fines based on play that took place last evening, starting with San Jose Sharks forward Evander Kane, who was given a $5,000 fine for elbowing against Radko Gudas, which is the maximum allowable based on the CBA for that type of play. He was given a major penalty on the play. I'm not really sure why this is not a suspension. Kane has a history here. He's already been suspended once this year. He's been suspended in the past, and to me, this does not look any less severe than some of the other incidents we've seen this year that have caused suspension, so I'm not really quite understanding why this is only a fine from player safety. Still, even after all this time, there still appears to be a bit of inconsistency, in my opinion, on how they call these things. But either way, Evander Kane has been fined $5,000. Now, Nashville Predators center iceman Ryan Johansson also was fined $5,000 as well, which is, again, the maximum allowable based on the CBA for this type of offense. This happened against the Tampa Bay Lightning and Braden Point. Now, of course, he was also given a 5-minute major in a game misconduct. And again, based on the play, it's one of those things that kind of looks like an accidental on-purpose type of play with an elbowing call. I thought another one-game suspension could have been justified in this case as well. But again, no call. So I'm not really sure exactly why these are only fines, but that's how NHL player safety has decided to rule here. Now, of course, as we know, we've seen all kinds of stuff going on lately with the NHL when it comes to different allegations being held against certain coaches. We've seen Akim Aliu come out and talk about Bill Peters, which ultimately cost him his job where he resigned. We've seen all kinds of comments come out about former Toronto Maple Leaf bench boss Mike Babcock. And now Akim Aliu, who of course was involved in the Bill Peters situation, has met with the NHL, which involved Bill Daly and Gary Bettman. We don't know a lot about everything that went on and exactly what's going to come from it, but the statement that he did make afterwards indicated that big change could be coming. Hopefully this will draw some attention to NHL teams and how coaches are hired and the process they go through to do background checks, and to hopefully avoid many of these situations happening in the future and get people in there that are going to be, not only good coaches, but good people not cross that line where they're, basically abusing players. That's certainly not anything that we want to see here. Besides Bill Peters and Mike Babcock, there's more allegations against Chicago Blackhawks assistant coach Marc Crawford. However, the information that's come out against Crawford is not new, so I'm not really sure exactly why the Blackhawks have decided to act now. I guess they probably felt like they needed to based on everything else that's going on against other coaches. But basically, former players Brent Sopel and Patrick O'Sullivan have kind of reiterated things that they've stated before. Brent Sopel was on his Spit and Chicklets podcast some time ago. And of course, Patrick O'Sullivan wrote a book about all the abusive history he's endured, not only by NHL coaches, but all of it, in his case, started with his father. I believe his book came out 3 to 4 years ago. It's actually quite an interesting read, and I highly recommend you check out his book if you haven't done so. But basically, Patrick O'Sullivan reiterated on Twitter what he went through with his first NHL coach when he started with the LA Kings, which was obviously referred to as Marc Crawford. And of course, the information on Brent Sopel, what he said about Crawford, resurfaced recently as well. So the Chicago Blackhawks have basically taken Marc Crawford away from the bench. He's basically on leave away from the team while they complete an investigation and decide his future with the organization. So it's not really any secret here. These things are not new information. Patrick O'Sullivan, like I said, wrote a book 3 to 4 years ago and made it very clear all the things he endured under Marc Crawford. So I guess we'll see what comes from it, but we very well might see another coach end up losing his position over things that have taken place here in the past. Staying with this same type of thing, even though it's not in the NHL, we saw a similar situation happen in junior hockey in the Western Hockey League, part of the CHL here in Canada. The Swift Current Broncos fired a trainer who also doubled as an equipment manager who had been on the job for 10 years. What they're referring to as demeaning, derogatory, unprofessional behavior towards their players. So I'm not quite sure exactly the incidents that took place, but Swift Current has taken action here and relieved him of his duties as well. And I do think a lot of these events are going to continue to come out. Would not be shocking or surprising to see more players, especially former players that are no longer in the NHL, no longer working for any kind of NHL organization, to speak up about any kind of situations they've dealt with. So I guess we will see how this movement continues and what other information comes out about various NHL head or assistant coaches around hockey here. But we'll see what happens in the future and how this might change the game going forward. That is all your news updates for today. So, of course, as always, want to know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section. Let me know what your thoughts are, and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.